Welcome to Industry Outlook presented by Expediters Online and Expediter Services. I'm your host, Brandon Baxter. My guest today is Chief Operating Officer of Expediter Services, one Mr. Jeff Tacker. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Brandon, and thank you for making time to have me on your show.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those that don't know, Jeff, we go way back. I mean, I've been doing this for about 16 years in this industry. I feel like I've known you for every one of those years. So it's an honor to have you on with me. And again, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time today, Brandon, and hopefully people will grab a hold and maybe decide to come join us in expediting.
There we go. And that's actually where we want to start off, and I don't mean to, I'm not going to, do the hardball questions or even softball, maybe something middle of the road. But, speaking of expedite, let's jump right into that, right? What are latest trends that maybe you might have been seeing recently, Jeff, when it comes to your corner of the expedite industry? I mean, the industry has been all over the place, so maybe we can kind of start there and tell us what you're seeing.
We're starting to see a trend we're seeing as people from other segments of the industry, not in expediting, starting to come into expediting because they're saying, hey, there's some of these motor carriers and there's these services, and they've expanded their customer base and they've expanded their offerings. And so I can get into a place and have access to good freight, good rates with a good brand. And so we're starting to see some new entrants, not necessarily new to trucking, but new to expediting starting to come in. Another thing we're starting to see is people that's already in expediting and understand what's out there. I will call them the informed crew or the informed operators.
Well, they've been around long enough now, right?
They have, and they know it. And so everything that glitters is not gold. So they don't just jump and run to fool's gold. So they're deciding to stay and mine where they are, to work what they have, to do what's been put in front of them, and they're remaining loyal. So we're seeing retention and stability stay up at the motor carriers we're with. But now that does not mean that it's not been hard time.
And it's interesting that you say that because, and as you just alluded to, I mean, Freight Waves, right? A couple months back had an article that seemed to provide some sort of an update with, what's being known or recalled as the Great Freight Recession. I mean, as far as what you're seeing, I mean, where do you think we are as an industry right now, in terms of maybe coming out of the recession?
Anybody knows that we've been in a tough type freight market. And so there's many things that would cause that. And like I said, since we're not the motor carrier, I don't have frontline conversations with all the shippers and that customer base, but we're getting it given to us very openly and transparently with the motor carriers that we support. So it has been tough. Now, the freight's still there. They still have the freight. But as we know, when it come out of COVID and all the money that was put in, which drove up the inflation, which drove up all the costs, and which drove many people into the trucking industry and even into expediting, it brought lots of people in. Everybody's chasing the almighty dollar, and they came in, they ran after it, and trucking grew. Well, when things tightened down, so costs went up, and then the supply and demand started getting out of balance. They had more supply than they had demand. They had more trucks than they had people, or more trucks than they had freight to put on the trucks.
Right.
So freight levels, I think, are pretty good, but they've just got a lot more people vying to get into that freight. And so where we're at right now, Brandon, is I think the industry's going through a balancing act, and is trying to get things in line. And unfortunately, there's good people that's going through some very tough times.
Yeah, kind of caught in the crosshairs.
They really are. And some of it is because, sometimes we make our own mistakes in our own decisions and we get over leveraged. I say we, just normal people operating.
Sure.
And then other times you just sort of caught, you get splashed, with the water that people run through the mud hole that's been created in the storm, right? And so
right.
You're wet that
way Great way to put it.
Yeah. So that happens. But I do think that we're bouncing along the bottom. I think we should start seeing some things trend up. But now with that, we're in an election year, Brandon, and I know I've read many different writers that say people believe that's causing it, that's not causing it. And I'm not getting political. I believe everybody's got their own political beliefs. And
Sure.
we're talking about trucking, not about politics. So
Right.
I'm not trying to get into that area. But what I will tell you is in an election year, it's the knowns or the unknowns, more likely is the best way to put it, that creates the
Yeah.
instability. So you can't trend, you can't forecast, you can't. People don't want to make long-term plans because they don't know what's going to come out. And
Sure.
then while it doesn't matter what political party. I mean, it matters to you, but I mean, as far as this
Right. Right.
conversation, it doesn't matter what political party you're in. You just need to know what to plan for and what to
Yeah.
do, and then those people make policies which do affect us, and then
Sure.
those policies that they make have an impact on how money comes in and money goes out, and people come in and people go out, because
Right.
in business people follow the money. And so that's where we're at, I believe, as far as the current industry, as far as coming out
Right.
of the recession. So some people are saying fourth quarter, you could see a little bit of bump because the demand should be up. Consumers hopefully will be spending
Right.
some
Right.
more, which everything that we have normally is touched by a truck at some point in time, which is
Yes.
driven by a driver or contractor. And so hopefully we'll start seeing it bounce, with some positive energy in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter. And then I would expect it's going to be spring of 2025 would be
Okay.
what my expectations were before things balance back out and everything's right sized. And I do expect that we'll see a good trend up starting in spring of 25. But that's just projections from, just a common person like myself.
Like you said before, we're not experts in this. We go along with the trends. We go along with what we see every day because you, myself, I mean, we've been in this long enough. You see the ups and downs. You see the people coming and going. Specifically in Expedite, you see a lot of the same, names and faces. Sometimes they pop up in different places. I mean, I know that I've been one of those people. And so, that not that there's anything wrong with that. I guess where I want to circle back to, Jeff, is that you mentioned, your feeling on this, and that's all it is. Again, it's an opinion, it's a thought, it's a feeling on where things may be headed. Um, Spring 2025. I mean, and that's not even you saying that we're necessarily going to break even. That's where you feel like, hey, I think we're going to come out on top of this again. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, there's people breaking even now and making
Sure.
money now, but you just
Sure.
have to, pennies make dollars. You've got to watch the pennies, and pennies
Yeah.
make the dollars. So I
Yep.
think you have to do all that you can do to be wise and a good steward over what you have. So you
Sure.
got to be very efficient. You got to keep your costs down. You got to do everything that you can to drive cost out of your business, and you got to maximize your efficiencies. It's just
Yeah.
simple business economics 101. People are making money now. It's just not been easy. It's just not been
Right.
fun. You're having
Right.
to work, as my uncle who's passed now used to say, you got to work twice as hard to make half as much. So you got to gear down if you're in the truck to climb that mountain. It takes
Yeah.
more fuel and a lower gear and more concentration to
Yeah.
navigate the road that you're on. So I'm not saying that trucking's not good. There's people always going to make it, and there's people always
Sure.
not going to make it. And
Sure.
some of that has to do with them. We're just at a different time period where
Right.
you've got an odd influx of money that came in during the pandemic,
Right.
and odd stimulus packages that come in through certain policies
Right.
and political parties, and that juices the economy. And then when that juices the economy, it's like a kid, they get on a sugar high, and what goes up must come down. And
Right.
then that starts coming down when the sugar wears off. And now all of a sudden it comes down. But the issue is you've got cost that could be inflation that's here to stay. And you got earnings that's at best case leveled, if not stagnant or
Right.
declining. And so there's where the pain and the gap comes in. And it's not easy now. I mean, it's real. When
No.
you have more truck load and your expenses are up and R&M's up and labor costs is up and
Yeah.
everything operationally is up and your rates aren't going because there's too many trucks. I mean, that's a real deal. When you go to the grocery store, it can't be theoretical. It's factual, whether
Yes.
you got money or don't, and whether you're paying your bills or not.
Right.
That's a real deal. So
Yep.
it's just painful. But to answer your question back around, to circle back, is there are people making it now, and I think they're going to continue. It's just very thin margins, and your room for error are small. You cannot take extra time operationally out of the truck. You cannot do things that you had the luxuries or the way to do it before, because you just
Right.
don't have the excess resources to do that. So I do expect fourth quarter people to get a little breathing room, hopefully,
Okay.
and that's what we're projecting. And then the election would take place. Maybe there'd be one rate cut, they're saying now, in
Right.
2024, and then they're talking about one or two in 25. And all of that comes into play with what's going to happen in getting things back rolling.
I think that's a great way to kind of wrap things up. What is it that ES could help with folks out there? Let's talk a little bit about that. Would be something that we can wrap this up with.
Sure, Brandon. So we help people in many different ways. We want them to come in the way they want to come in, and we do have specific partner motor carriers that we supply our services to or with, but we can help anybody. So whatever area they want to come in, if they want to come in and just rent a truck and be long-term contractors and rent, we can do that. If they want to come in and own equipment, we can help them do that. If they have down payment or not, if they have regardless of their credit file or their credit history, we've got many different programs and packages to help people. We've got a owner operator program that helps every truck that whoever chooses operate the most efficiently that they can, with many different back end support mechanisms such as fuel discounts and insurance discounts and shop and labor discounts and tire discounts. So we do everything that touches that truck, except we're not the motor carrier. But we do it in a service capacity, not as we're telling people what to do. We help people decide and do what they want to do.
I want to thank you so very much for coming on with me today. It's been a pleasure.
Brandon, I want to thank you, and I want to say I do appreciate you. Let me just get on here and ramble and flow. And I know that, not to take over the conversation, but I just do appreciate you.
This has been Industry Outlook, presented by Expeditors Online and Expediter Services. I've been your host, Brandon Baxter. Until next time.